There's over 150,000 career coaches on LinkedIn alone, but arguably one of the most well known with the largest followers and the largest influence in the career coaching space is Austin Belcak. I have been very lucky to have been connected and become friends with Austin throughout the years and seeing how much growth has his social media has had, but more importantly, his business has had. And in this conversation that you're about to watch is a conversation with Austin and myself and the whole career coaches community. And I would have thought that a lot of the fellow career coaches, we'd had over 37 live career coaches at this event, were going to ask Austin a lot of questions about how he grew his LinkedIn to over 1.3 million followers. In fact, that wasn't the case. Most of the conversation that you're about to watch actually circled around client success in the business of career coaching. Because what you're going to see is that just because you have a large following doesn't mean that you have a good business. You can also have a very small following in a big business. But Austin is one of those rare cases where you have both a really successful business and a really successful social media presence. So I want you to enjoy it, but not just listen his advice on what he did for that thing, because what Austin does really well is he processes and sees the things in a very systematic way that generates predictable results. Now, if you enjoy this conversation and you want to be part of this career coach community that's absolutely free, right below this video, there's a link to join. And if you're watching the replay and you find this valuable, and you're a career coach that is looking to scale your business with systematic process and way, that is what we do here at Opni. We help career coaches build a more profitable, scalable, and impactful business. So if you want to learn more about how my team and I can help you be able to build a very successful career coaching business, then schedule a call below to speak to us as well. Enjoy the conversation with the one and only Austin Belcak. Welcome everyone to another live session of the Career Coaches community. Today we have an amazing guest. Not only is our guest, I would say, one of the largest career influencers on LinkedIn, but as someone who has worked with him, someone who has gotten to know him throughout the years, I can tell you that our guest today genuinely cares about what he puts out, generally cares about the success of his clients, generally cares about adding value to people. I've had the pleasure of interacting with Austin many times, and every single time he's always figuring out ways to add value. And even if you've followed him and seen his growth, you could tell that it's just somebody who genuinely cares and finds strategic ways to add value to his community, but also continue to elevate himself. So, Austin, as someone who's been, I know we've probably talked for the last 5 years, but I've seen your growth, man. Congratulations, and I appreciate you being able to come to this, share your thoughts with the community, open it up for some Q&A. I'm sure there's a lot of people out here that look up to what you're doing, look up to what you have done, and probably have millions of questions for you. So without further ado, Austin Belcak, welcome, CEO and founder of Cultivating Culture. How are you, Austin?
I'm good, Daniel. No pressure after that intro, but I appreciate it. That's very generous. And the feeling is mutual. It's been a blast, connecting over. I think we're on like year 3 or 4, maybe more of going back and forth. So yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot from you as well. And I'm excited to chit chat with everybody here and see if any of the stuff that I share can hopefully be helpful to you all.
I love the humbleness, man. I mean, hopefully, we say this a lot, like when we have this call, like the best way to reach any goal is to learn from someone who's done it. And I could tell you also, I mean, that's when I had reached out to you about like LinkedIn support, it's like, you've done it, and one thing I would say, and I think I've said this before, whether it was on a podcast or something, it's like, sometimes you see people on social media and you're like, maybe they're posting things that is going viral and there's an element of luck there. And I would tell you that from our conversations, you was like, there's no way this is not luck. Like everything that you've done has been like a process, a system. Like you took luck out of that equation when it came to your success, not only in your business, but also in LinkedIn. And because the way that you think, man, and I hope that this prompts more question, is that you're very systematic, process oriented. Like you're not just like, all right, let me just put this post and hope this works. So there's a rationale behind every time you write something. There's a strategy, there's thoughts. It's not necessarily like, let me throw it to the wall and hope it sticks. Like you're trial and error, there's systems, you're tracking, you're looking at the numbers, and you're making educated decisions. And I think that's what I'm most excited about. Like, yeah, like I think it's awesome that you probably have one of the largest followers on LinkedIn, but it's not only that, like you've built a business around it because there's a lot of people who could have millions of followers on Instagram or even on LinkedIn, but don't have the business around it. And I think that's awesome, why I'm super excited. And so let's do this. Why don't you maybe share 5, 10 minutes, a little bit more about your business journey, your transition from, Microsoft to really going full force on cultivating culture and where you are today, and then maybe we can open up for Q&A.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Totally happy to pick those up as we go and try to weave things in, or get them afterwards, individually. But I have it up next to me, so if you pop something in there, I'll see it. But yeah, so I mean, quick background on me. Essentially, I think the very beginning was that I was just a struggling job seeker myself. I graduated from college and had no idea what I wanted to do. I was in a career that wasn't, the right fit for me. And I tried to get out there and take the advice that, everybody gives job seekers these days. And same back then, right? Tweak your resume, go apply online, see what sticks, tap into the alumni network. And none of that worked for me. So I kind of had to figure out my own way of going about this. And I spent about a year and a half just kind of trying to tear apart the hiring system, and eventually turned it into my own system that led to interviews and offers at Google, Microsoft, Twitter, a couple other places. Ended up working at Microsoft, was there for 5 years, got promoted 3 times. But about a month into my job at Microsoft, I had a lot of people coming to me, mostly out of college, because I was arguably like the worst student of all my friends in college, and they all came to me and they're like, "How did this happen? Like, how did you end up at Microsoft?" And so after like the 15th, 20th person messaged me, I kind of thought there might be something here. So I wrote my whole system up at a high level and put it in a blog post, and just kind of came up with our site name and a really rudimentary blog and put it out there. And that was back in, I think, 2016. And so that kind of took off, and the rest of it was building from there. So kind of the stages I went through were, first, I never wanted to do a coaching business. I always wanted to do like a product scaled, digital course business. And coaching kept like showing up as this thing that was the most obvious path to growth, and I kept like pushing it away. And so I initially scaled through courses and doing product launches and things like that. But then I seriously started considering like moving on from my full-time job and into this full-time. And I realized, coaching was kind of the easiest path to do that. So I started scaling up my coaching. I basically did that until coaching more than replaced the income that I was making at my job. And then in October 2020, decided to take the leap. And since then, we really just had a pretty specific focus on growing and scaling our coaching business. There's a couple other business lines we've started. We have some SaaS tools. We have obviously those digital courses and stuff. But coaching is kind of the bread and butter of our business. So we worked on scaling that up, and that went from kind of just me doing these a la carte sessions to now we have a full-on program, Daniel, similar to, the one that you guys have. And we have a team now of 5 people who are all kind of operating in different capacities, career coaching, sales, things like that. So a lot of the pieces of the business have kind of been scaled and delegated to other people who are now doing them for us. And so that's basically where we're at now. We kind of have a nice little system where we get leads in through LinkedIn and some other various places. We kind of convert them to clients, and we work with those clients to land jobs. So there's a lot of nuances in there, obviously, but I don't want to go into too much detail without knowing what's helpful for you all. So definitely let me know what would be in the chat, or, tell Daniel. But also, Daniel, I don't know if that covers most of the bases. I'm happy to go deeper on anything, but I don't want to sit here blabbing away about my stuff, and I'd rather help some folks with what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think this is like what we end up. Let's open it up for Q&A a little earlier. So if you have questions, please don't like hesitate. Put it on the chat. Raise your hand with with the reaction button, and then we can kind of go from there. And so Chitan, you're the first question. If you want to unmute yourself and talk, it'd be much better
I would
than.
love to. Sure. Hey Austin, great meeting. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for your time. My question is, how do you find the common denominator between all the your potential students or your clients, right? That you can scale those parts of that coaching aspect digitally as well, so that you can create videos and share those with them, so that you can save some time not coaching them on that.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think I guess my is the question like how do you turn that into a digital course that you might sell in addition to coaching, or is it like how do we make resources that increase the value of the coaching program itself?
Yeah. So more towards like a hybrid aspect of coaching. Say if I have one-on-ones as well, but some part of it could be common between across all the clients, and I would like to digitalize that in terms of videos and share them so that they can spend their time at that pace.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's two ways to go about this. One is kind of the way that I went, which is, and I actually think that this is a dumb way to go about it. So maybe don't do it this way. But
Okay.
the way that I approached it was I was so focused on like the scale and the like not doing dollars for hours thing that I built my course first and then started doing coaching. So when I started doing coaching, I already had my full-on course that I could use as a supplement. I would actually recommend doing the reverse. And basically, I would do your coaching, and then I would start to create a framework around, obviously you probably have some systems in place for the stuff that you coach. And so I don't know if like I guess I could ask, how is your coaching structured? Is it like a program? Is it like a la carte sessions? Like what does that look like?
It's a one-on-one program for now.
Okay. And when you say one-on-one program, is that like what is the focus of the program? Is it structured like are there certain sessions dedicated to certain parts of the job search or other things? Like what does the structure look like?
So I've just started, like the way I go about it right now is I start with their biggest pain point that they have, and then we unfold to newer things.
Okay.
And so I keep taking off barriers in their path right now so that they can keep moving forward confidently. But that's how I am looking at it right now. But I don't know if there's a better way. I would love to know that.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I would go back through all of your clients and I would go look and maybe label each session. So like the first session kind of has that clear focus, but then I'm sure other sessions have different focuses for different clients. I would go and I would just have a list where you write out every single time a session comes up, the
Okay.
order that it appeared in and maybe the frequency. And so now you almost have like a prioritized roadmap of the content that you want to build, and then you can start to build out that content slowly where you kind of chip away at however many videos there are. That's kind of how we build our courses. Is I'll say, all right, I have 70 videos, I want to get it done in this amount of time, 3 months, let's say. Here's how many videos I need to create per week, and you can kind of do that. Alternatively, something that you can do is that's like the more, I would say, like crisp, clean, refined way. If you want to do it like the quick and dirty way, you can just have it set up where anytime you record a Loom video for a client or a video for a client, you just pull that and dump it into, you know, a knowledge base or the course or whatever it is. And now all of a sudden you'll rack them up pretty quickly. But the best way is to let your clients dictate what content you should be creating rather than just assuming this is the content that everybody wants, because then you're going to spend a lot of time building out stuff that some of it's what people want, but some of it's not. Whereas if you start or let your clients lead, then you're going to be able to build videos that are aligned with the needs of the largest amount of people. And so you're going to be able to scale that out really quickly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate it.
For sure.
Shaitan,
No
just to
problem.
add there, I think awesome, man. I agree with you. I did it wrong too. Like I wrote a book on it, which it talks about the three A's. But if you look at my program, it doesn't cover the three A's. But after you and I would tell you, like if you work with 10 clients, you don't need a lot. Like you once you've worked with 10 clients, you're gonna realize a commonality. What's the 80% of the time that you find yourself repeating over and over? And
Right.
that is the
Right.
part you make in the course. And so
Okay.
I would actually do one-on-one first, and then from there create any courses and materials. Your clients will dictate what materials
Dictate.
to create first, what courses, what video, what resources. It's so
Hmm.
true.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Ellie,
Awesome.
Hi. Thank you, Austin, so much for being here. My question is geared towards client success. I know that in your process, you have your clients essentially build proposals while networking. And I would love to have my clients do this too. But there's these three big objections of the first being, what if they just steal it? The second being, this takes so much time, I don't think it'll be worth it. And then the third being, well, I don't get responses anyway, so why should I do this? And I want to be prepared for each of those objections. So I'm curious what your responses are to those objections.
For sure. Well, first, Ellie, great to meet you as well. And thank you so much for the kind words. But I also get those three objections. And so I'm happy to share. So first, just some context. We do them when we're networking, but we always tell our clients that there are three criteria that we use to kind of trigger the creation or the investment of building one of these proposals. And so we call them VVPs. So I'll just use that because it's easy for my brain. But the first is the easiest one. You already have an interview lined up. It's ready to go. Awesome. No brainer. The second one is that this is a dream company. Like you would do anything, doesn't matter. You're going to move mountains because you want a job there so badly. The third one is the most common, and that is when you've had an initial conversation with somebody who you feel could be an advocate for you. And so when you explain that to people, that kind of removes some of the anxiety around, like, some of our clients are like, do I have to make these for every job I apply to? And we're like, no, like that's a waste of time. So that's our starting point, is just give them that context. Once they have that context, for the other two, what if people steal your ideas and it's a lot of time? So for the time piece, what I tell people is like, look, you paid to work with me. Like clearly what you were doing before is not working for you, and you spent X amount of time doing that. And so this thing, yes, it may be a couple extra hours here, but look at the upside, like new job, new salary, new culture. And hopefully, in the work that you're doing together, you can show them like, we're working to make sure that the opportunities you're targeting are at the comp range you're looking for, are aligned with your values, are checking all these boxes. And so you get all of those extra things. And so if you're telling me that doing that and putting in, let's say you build 3 of these, if you're telling me, and let's say that they take, I don't know, a crazy number, let's say they take 10 hours each. If you're telling me that an extra 30 hours is not worth this amount of extra money every year for the rest of your life, so to speak, a better manager, like getting out of this situation that you're in, like hitting on their pain points. If you're telling me that's not worth it, then, I think you need to sit down and really think about how badly you want these things, because you can not do those, but look where that got you before. And so the choice is kind of, we can do these things and maximize our chances of getting this job and know that we've done everything that we possibly could. Or we could not do those things, maybe not get some of these jobs, and then potentially eventually have to settle for something. And then 6 to 12 months, we're right back in the same position. So I always kind of like to push them on that. I also have a little bit of an ROI case where I can try to pull it up here, because the numbers, I always forget the numbers. So if you just give me 1 second to grab it here. And sometimes it's a little slow to load. All right, perfect. So essentially what I tell people, and I'm mostly going to read this, but I'll tell people, like, here's the math. A new job, let's say, nets you 10 to 20% on top of your current salary. And I'm just kind of taking, I think the most recent number I saw for like average race was like 14.2%, something like that. But anyway, somewhere in the middle there. So if your job, if your client is making 60 grand a year, let's say, which, most of our clients make more, and maybe yours too, and this just scales with that. But that's basically a $6,000 to $12,000 raise. So let's say that project or proposal takes you 8 hours to create. And let's say that you have 4 companies that you're interviewing at. So if you create proposals for each of them, that's 32 hours of your time that you're investing. And let's say that 3 of those companies steal your ideas and completely ghost you, and you never hear from them again. But the 4th company, they really love what they see, and they hire you, and they hire you for, let's say, something in the middle, like an $8,000 raise. So first off, just from like an hourly rate, you're looking at $250 an hour for putting together those proposals, which is frankly, like the new rate at 68 grand that you're making is $32 an hour. So you're almost 10xing your rate for the hours that you put in, for that just from like a fun, like, consultative rate setup. But you netted yourself that $8,000 raise. You also, that you're going to have that indefinitely, and you now have a new baseline that you've moved to for, the jobs that you're going to consider moving forward. You're also getting all the other benefits that we talked about: management, culture, blah, blah, blah. And then finally, the last thing that I always like to say is like, think about the type of company that's taking these actions. Like if a company is going to steal the ideas that you put together for them and you're not even on the payroll, what's going to happen when you are on payroll? What's going to happen when you want that promotion a year from now, but your manager goes to their manager and says, hey, look at this amazing thing that I put together, when he actually knows that Ellie put it together. And if that's going to keep happening, like how long are you going to stay at that company? What's the longevity and the trajectory here? Whereas that company that took the chance on you, we know that they're super invested in the type of person that you are, and that your work that you contribute to them going above and beyond, that's going to be recognized and noticed. So that's kind of how I reply to all of that. And usually people are like, oh, okay, I get it at that point. And I think that also solves for the other question about what happens if people steal my ideas. I kind of run them through that script as well. So anyways, is that helpful?
So helpful. Thank you so much.
For sure. Anything else I can help with?
We can move on.
But by the way, like, I think it's important for me, like when Austin just shared that, it's not only about the answer that he gave for that question, but the systematic approach of him walking through the logic, whether it's a lead, whether it's a client, whether it's probably a team or employee, he's always walking through the systematic, the logic, the reasoning behind the action, so that when you're working with those professionals, whether it's your teammate, a lead, or a client, they're seeing the rationale behind it, and they're way more likely to execute, be engaged, and follow the process. So I think even more important than the script that you just read is like how you think through the problem solving, which is incredible.
For sure. Yeah, the why is big. If you can sell people on that, like the rest of what you say doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Todd, you had a kind of like a follow-up question about that. Did you want to add to that, or did that answer your question? Yeah, I was reading a follow-up on that, so I wasn't sure if it was a follow-up on this particular client success question.
It was more a follow-up to my question later on.
Oh, okay.
But if it makes sense now, I can ask it.
Go ahead.
Wait.
Go ahead. Yeah, take it.
Yeah, so I think just as a follow-up, as we're talking about client success, one thing that I am always struggling with is how to provide accountability. So Austin, how do you and your team structure your accountability with your coaching clients so they get success? Because at the end of the day, we can only give them so much, right? But they're the ones executing. So how do you guys go about that?
Yeah. So first off, Todd, great to see you. Thanks so much for the question. But yeah, so essentially there's I'd say two major things that we do here. The first is in the sales process. So we actually know, I saw you had another question about like, what do we promise people and what do they get if we don't meet that promise and whatever. On our side, we used to play the game of like, oh, we'll promise you this and we'll promise you that. And what we kind of found was that we attracted a lot of clients who were really just looking for us to do everything for them. They were basically saying, hey, if I pay Austin and his team this money, I'll get X out of it, which was usually a job offer in a certain amount of time. That was usually what people were really dialed into. And so we've actually moved away from that. And we've done a lot to set really clear expectations that the number one thing that you're investing in with our program is learning a skill set that's going to make you a more effective job seeker and a more effective professional. And you're going to have that forever. And any of the results you see on our site, all of that, like those are well and good, but those are a byproduct of learning those skills. Mm-hmm. And we actually tell people, we have a lot of people in our sales calls who like really dial into, they're like, tell me about this success rate. How many clients got it? Over what period of time? Like, where do they live? Blah, 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 blah. And we're like, whoa, okay. So first off, we just need to take a step back and we need to reset expectations. Like people, and we tell them, we're like, people who are usually super focused on these metrics and these outcomes are usually not the best fits for our program, because what we've seen is blah, 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 blah. We just explained to them that like, this requires work. It's a two-way street. We'll show up and give you X amount from our side, but it's not going to work unless you show up and give us Y amount from your side. So we try to set those expectations really clearly in the pre-sale process. Once we've sold them, this may be, I don't know how your coaching operates. We have a really, really specific system and like a set of milestones that we go through with people. So we actually have progress milestones for each session with our clients, and we share those with them right as their first session starts. We kind of have some housekeeping stuff that their coach runs through, and we show them like, hey, here's what the next 12 to 16 weeks are going to look like. here's what you should be hitting that aligns with what we see get the best outcomes for our clients. And then we tell them like, look, we're all human. If you get off base, here's what we're going to do to help you, blah, 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 blah. But just like, this is just so you know and have a barometer to understand, like, are you on pace to see the results you're looking for, or are you not? And then we check in with them before their sessions, on their sessions about that. So we might, you know, if they're on session 3, we might reach out to them and be like, hey, I saw that you've done X and Y, but we're still a little short of this progress milestone. Like, did something come up at work? How can we support you? Like, what can we do to get you back on track by this session? And then if they, you know, don't share, we get them on the session, we ask them there as well. And we just keep really trying to reinforce that, like, these are the milestones that you need to be hitting. Like, these aren't for us. We don't care if you hit these. Like, we do because we want you to get the outcome you want, but really these are for you. And if you're not hitting these, you're just not going to have the odds of seeing the results that you're looking for. And what we found is that when we do those things, when we're really, really clear with the expectations and with what people should be doing, they kind of get it. And there isn't as much room to be like, oh, well, Todd, I'm not as satisfied with this. I thought X was going to happen and Y was going to happen. Because now you can be like, dude, like we showed you, this was the map and you're not hitting it. And I've reminded you this many times. And so I'm here, I'm ready to do this, but you need to kind of show up on your end as well. So it's a little bit of tough love. I sort of maybe, you know, dramatized it a little bit in my explanation there, but if we can do that, like, politely but firmly, that's what we've seen work really well with our clients.
Just really quick before we go, Evan, you're next, by the way. I know you, so don't worry, I see you. Before we move on to that, do you think it's easier? Like, I think about it like it's easier for you to say that, Austin, because you have all this credibility. But if I'm just starting out, I feel like I don't have the same leverage with clients. What would you say to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think for sure when you're earlier on, you make some sacrifices on that front, right? Just to kind of get started and start building. I think that you need to feel it out, right? I think that there's a certain, like, the way that it kind of worked for us was like, you make those sacrifices early so that you can get revenue that allows you to scale and build more credibility and put better systems in place. And then you can just kind of like climb the ladder a little bit. So I think you can take a softer approach. I mean, I think almost anybody on this call, no matter where you're at in the process, could say like, hey, you have these goals for your job search. Here are the milestones that our clients hit in terms of actions and progress that allow them to achieve those goals in the time frame that you're looking for. I'm not promising that you will, just telling you that this is what we see from the clients to get the outcomes that you're looking for. And so my plan is to hold you accountable to those goals. It may not always be fun. It may not always be easy, but this is what I'm here for as your coach. And this is how I'm going to help you see success. And I don't think you're going to lose. I think you'd actually gain credibility by being straightforward, transparent, and direct with people, because that's frankly what they hired you for. And then if you start finding people who get grumpy about it, I think you can then realize, like, do I want to take more of these clients? Or am I going to say no to these clients up front and find ways to attract and build systems that bring in clients that do appreciate that kind of feedback? And that's what we had to do. We started turning away a lot of clients. And of course, like, we would have made more money if we took on those clients, but our coaches' lives would be harder. My life would be harder. We'd have like all this junk to deal with instead of now, for the most part, we just focus on coaching people who want to be coached.
But I would even argue that you didn't lose money, because
for sure,
a lot of the time those clients are the ones who don't want to pay as much. Those are the clients that have that absorb all the resources
and then ask for a refund like 8 months later.
Ask for a refund 8 months later, and then slow you down. And because you're willing to say no to them in the short term, allow you to go faster in the long term. Because I dealt the same thing you're saying. I dealt with it. I remember taking on those clients because and then I was like, we started telling our team like we already found some key factors that like red flags, and like, okay, if those 3 flags are met, don't take them. And so then we just start identifying them short from the beginning, and we don't take them. And in the beginning, it hurts to say no to them because you're saying no to money, but in the long term, it's much, much better for you. So.
And I would actually say, Daniel, just to piggyback off of that. So we have people who, like, with those expectations, with those flags, we have the same set of flags. Yeah. But before we turn them away now, we just really firmly reset expectations with them. Yeah. And we'll tell them like, hey, so for example, people who are like super dialed into like our average time to offer, if that's their main focus and they have like multiple questions about it, we'll just say to them, hey, sounds like you're really concerned about the speed at which you're going to land a job. And we just want to let you know, like, that's not our number one priority. Our number one priority is teaching you this skill set and getting you into a value aligned job. Of course, we want to do that as quickly as possible, but speed is not our number one priority. So then we actually actively recommend them go somewhere else. We say, if that's what you're looking for, our coaching program isn't right for you. You should find another coach to work with. I cannot tell you how many times those people turn around and say, whoa, wait. Speed is, no, I'm good. Speed is okay. Like, sorry, I said that. Like, can I actually work with you guys? Blah, 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 blah. And then I'll say, you can, but this is what to expect. This is what we're all about. And if that's cool with you, join. And if not, don't join. And typically when those people join, now we've reset their expectations. And even if their expectations are still misaligned, we can point back and be like, hey, I told you not to join our program if you were worried about this, and you still decided to join. So here we are. So you can really, because at that point you have nothing to lose. Like, if they're not going to sign up anyways, it doesn't matter. You might as well just say, like, look, you can sign up, but here's the laundry list of stuff that we are all about and what you need to understand about our program. And weirdly, like, telling people no makes them like want to join more. And now you've reset expectations as well. So yeah,
love it. Evan.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Appreciate you putting this together, and Austin, really appreciate your time here.
For sure, Evan. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, I've got a bit of a two-parter here. Number one, I want to double click on the 2016 to 2020 period when you were just starting to ramp up the coaching to where it started to take over your full-time job income at Microsoft. So one there, what did you find was the tipping point? I'm sure there was a lot of consistent action throughout there. I'm not sure at what point you decided to go with the coaching, if it was maybe a year before you decided to leave your job. In hindsight, what was the big thing that you had changed that got you to that point? And then the second part of the question is, now that you've got a bigger business, you've got a team and all of that, how do you find your strategy now differs in terms of, I guess, the types of clients that you're going after and what you're thinking about day to day versus when you were just starting out and presumably solo?
Yeah, for sure. So for the first part, are you asking the tipping point for like going all in on coaching or leaving my job, or what outcome?
Yeah, the tipping point, I guess, being getting yourself to the level of income that matched your full-time job.
And by tipping point, we mean like what set of actions, or like what led to the increase in income that allowed it to exceed, or is that what you're asking? I just want to make sure I get your question right.
Yes, that's right. I guess set of actions. There might not be one. It might have just been that you were just hammering at it for X and Y period, and it just ended up working over time. But yeah, I'm just curious, looking back on things, is there something that you had changed throughout that period that had a pretty big impact that got you to that point?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, obviously I was fortunate enough to have like some good growth on LinkedIn. And I'm not sure that that's like the most repeatable strategy. Like, if I started from zero on LinkedIn today, could I get to where I am now? Maybe, but also probably not. I mean, the platform is a lot more competitive, and, it's changed a lot from when I started. And so I was certainly, lucky to have jumped in at the right time and, had some things go right there. But with that context, so one thing that I did was, whenever people reached out to me for questions prior to trying to ramp up coaching, I would just answer their questions. And I was like, if I give as many people free value as I can, I will build all this goodwill and everybody will be happy and all will be well. Immediately upon making that decision to try to scale up, when people reached out to me for advice or a question or whatever, I would just reply to them, and I would just say like, hey, Evan, great to meet you. Before I answer, just curious, are you looking for quick advice, or are you looking for more comprehensive help or coaching on this? That right there immediately started funneling a ton of leads to my coaching business, because so many people would raise their hand for the more comprehensive help and coaching. And that was my original lead gen funnel. And it was all just from people in my DMs. So that was super helpful, just asking people if they wanted to be coached. And then if they said, yes, I want comprehensive help, then I would send them a menu of services. I do still think that's the best way to go if you're trying to scale up. Basically, if you are, I would say definitely less than 6 figures, but maybe even to $250K a year, I would say that you probably want to do the a la carte services, just because it gives you the most offerings for the most people. And it also allows you to get that data going all the way back to Chintan's question. You get all that data around like what processes do I need to build? Like what is important to people? And then over time, you can start to turn that into more of like a cohesive system. But then what I would do is I would send it to people. And I would just say like, all right, here's our menu of pricing. Like here's how everything works. I had a whole PDF that kind of walked through all of our offerings and what you get, and it had testimonials and all this stuff. And then if people raise their hands initially for certain, like I wouldn't get on a 30-minute free call for a 60-minute session, but for almost everything else, resume, LinkedIn, like a larger package of sessions, I'd try to pre-qualify. And then I, if it was worth it, would get on a call quickly with people and just talk to them about how it would work and then sell them off the back of that. And that worked really well because of all the things I mentioned, but also what would happen is I would have a certain number of slots. So I would say, here's how many people I need to sell before I increase my prices. And then I essentially just continue to slowly increase and ramp up my prices as I refined the funnel, got more demand, got more people closing. And that brought my prices up to a point where, you know, that scaled our revenue. I didn't have to sell any additional people to grow. I could just sell the same number, but with higher prices, I made more money. And so that was really helpful as well. And that essentially was what took me from doing like, you know, less than $10,000 of coaching a year, mostly because I didn't want to do it, but then up to the point where it replaced my revenue or my income at Microsoft. And then I was able to make the jump. So does that answer the question that you had for part one?
Yeah, definitely. It does. Little secondary question on that follow-up. So you're saying you would engage with people in the DMs, they come to you, they put their hand up in terms of they want some sort of support. You'd fire them, okay, this is what the services look like. Along with that, did you also have your like full coaching program and like all the details on there with that? Or did you kind of wait to disclose that until you got on a call with them after they put their hand up for
yeah, so I did put it on the a la carte
system
thing. So it was basically like, you know, 60-minute session, resume / LinkedIn, interview prep, salary negotiation. Maybe I'm missing one or two things. And then at the bottom, it was like the complete package is what we call it. And it kind of walked through the whole like process and system. And what I kind of found eventually was that as I grew, it was just easier, more profitable, and more fun to funnel people into the program than it was the a la carte stuff. I think it would have been hard. I don't think the program would have been as good or effective if I just started with that, which is why I recommend the a la carte as like a quick way to scale.
Yeah.
But I do think that the eventual goal should be to have like a specific program. I mean, you all can see what Daniel's done. I mean, his business has that same type of setup where like there's a very specific outline and there's a structure and there's a why, and you can sell people on like that as a whole, rather than it's really hard to differentiate on it. It's like, why is Evan better at writing my resume than like these other 100,000 resume writers on LinkedIn? And it's really hard to differentiate in those individual spaces. Whereas if you have that overarching system, there's a lot more opportunity to do that. So that's kind of, I did offer it initially. And over time, I realized I wanted more people to get into it. So then I stopped offering anything else. And I basically built a funnel around getting people into that specific program.
Got it. Okay. That makes total sense. Thanks, Austin. Appreciate it. I know there's a lot of questions in line, so I won't take up any more time.
Evan, but I think like the pros of like getting to the program as soon as possible. One, it's easier to charge a higher ticket when you have a program, because anytime you charge for one resume, one LinkedIn, or one interview, people automatically are changing time for money. So if you say at $500, they're like $500 for 1 hour, like that's a lot of money. Versus when you charge a program, they're paying for the result. Yeah, I'm paying to get the job, and so I'm willing to pay $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for the transformation. But in the beginning, if you're just starting out, you want to get those reps in. So like I do totally get, and I agree with Austin. Carrie, you're next.
Okay, so I'm outside in the Chicagoland area, and the cicadas are crazy right now. So sorry if you hear them. Austin, I would like to ask you a couple of questions around LinkedIn, if that's okay. For sure. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers just so you have a little bit of an idea of where I am, like a benchmark of where I am. I'm at about 54,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I have a newsletter on there that's been growing pretty quickly with about like 28,000 subscribers. My question for you is, you were mentioning, LinkedIn has really changed and gotten really competitive, especially to get people like engagement, even views, right? So I have 3 strategies that I'm ready to like start implementing, and I would just like to know if you think they're good or not good. The first one is to really, with my posting, be very intentional and start having like theme days. So on Sunday, I'm talking about salary, and like look at those metrics so that I can look and compare what is getting engagement, what's not. The second one is, even though I'm like totally out of breath and not presenting myself well on camera right now, I have been getting a ton of feedback from people that I need to be on camera more. That the second that like I do any type of teaching on camera, I convert. And so my thought is to do more LinkedIn Live. So I'm curious about your feedback on that. And then also curious if you have a newsletter and what you're seeing with newsletters on LinkedIn and if people are actually opening them and engaging them.
Got it. Okay. So first piece was theme days. Second piece was more time on camera. Third piece was LinkedIn newsletters. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Well, first of all, Carrie, I'm glad you're out for a walk. I'm a big fan of walking meeting, especially in Chicago, where there's only so many days a year you can do it. So, big ups to you. No worries. So for the first one, I love the theme day strategy. At first, I was going to say not to worry about it, but to the end of getting data, that's huge. So Daniel mentioned, in his generous intro, like I have a system for everything, and I try to. But systems only work when you know what the steps are and what the outcomes are, and you know that you have a high degree of confidence in them. In order to get to that place, you have to test a lot of stuff. And so that's actually something that I do. I don't have the theme days, but I have enough volume of posts where we cover a pretty broad swath of topics. And I actually have an Excel sheet. I don't use any of like the analytics tools that are out there. I mean, you can if you want. I personally find it better to be like in it every day. But part of that setup is I will tag each post with a overarching category and then a subcategory. And I actually go back on a quarterly basis and I look at my top 10, top 15 posts. And I try to understand, what categories, what subcategories. I look at character length for the post, or character count, excuse me. I look at I like try to self-rate my hook, like the beginning of the post. I look at a whole bunch of factors, and then I try to create a checklist so that all my posts going forward, or most of them, should be written using the checklist of what was successful over the last quarter. But to get to that place, I think opening it up and having theme days where you're putting content out in these different categories is a really smart idea, because then you actually know that you're covering most of the bases, and then you can use all that to refine later. So would recommend with that eventual goal of optimization in mind for number one. For number two, can I ask, are people telling you that time on camera is important because they think it's important, or is it actually converting at a higher rate for you when you are doing that type of like video content?
Both.
Okay.
But I think I was struggling for a while with like making the time, because, going live on LinkedIn is a lot more pressure than like going live in my communities where I already have paying customers, where like I can literally go right now sweaty in my community. Right. And like, I just went out and exercised. Sorry, guys. But on LinkedIn, I feel like sometimes I shy away from it because there's more pressure, right? It's like the people at the top of the funnel that I'm trying to convert. So the few experiments that I have done when my cart's open, it worked.
Okay. So that's what I would lean into. And I'll say a couple of things. First of all, you can scroll through my feed and tell me the last time you saw a video posted from me. And I think you'd have to go back a couple of years.
Okay.
I tested video. I did LinkedIn Lives for a little while during the pandemic. And I just hated doing them. And they also didn't do very much for me. So I stopped doing them. And I know like my energy, like writing is an energy creator for me, and video is a big energy drainer. And so I just don't mess with video at all for that reason. But okay, I do mess with things that increase my conversion rate. So I personally did not see much of an increase from video, but if you see a specific data-driven reason to do it, I think it's worth investing in. And now it feels that way, but I think if you said like, all right, I'm going to commit to building this out and making this a thing. I think what you'd find is probably like most other things in your business that you've done that with, you can get it to a place where it doesn't feel as stressful, where it doesn't feel as anxiety, inducing, because you have that system built around it. And then you also get to benefit from those higher conversion rates as well. So I always like to see what the data is telling me. And just because something has a higher conversion rate doesn't mean that I'm going to do it. But if I'm at a place where I want to level up, where I want to scale, where I want to be doing more, and there's a really obvious path to that, I'm going to do that even if it feels uncomfortable or feels like a little bit more work, because I believe that it's going to be worth it on the other side. So if there are clear reasons that we have spoken about for why you wouldn't want to do it, those are valid. But from everything you're telling me, if the conversion rate is there, I think it might be worth investing in just building out a little bit of a system. Now, the way you do that is up to you. LinkedIn Live or maybe just videos. You could try that as a happy medium. So it's not like as crazy, as long, as involved. It's also not live, and you could see how that plays. And then you could track your data on that and see what that looks like. So that's what I would say there. And then the third piece on LinkedIn newsletters, I don't have one. I never have one. Investing in any LinkedIn feature really terrifies me, because like we had stories, now we don't have stories. We had creator mode, now we don't have creator mode. We had newsletters, now newsletters have evolved 700 times. But the thing that I think is most worrisome about them is that LinkedIn owns all of your newsletter subscribers, and there's no way to export them. There's no way to build funnels around them. There's no way to do anything. So personally, newsletters are amazing. I recommend wholeheartedly that everybody has one, but that you host it yourself off of LinkedIn in a place where you own the audience, and you actively work to build up that audience there. Because I can tell you firsthand, I mean, on our side, my LinkedIn engagement has been down significantly. I think 60-70% over the last 12 months, but our business has grown. Like we doubled last year with that happening. And the reason was because I made a conscious choice to keep LinkedIn going, but invest in other channels at the same time. And that's not where anybody should be early on in their business. You should focus on one channel until you scale up to a certain place. But I think, there are certain, like when you're scaling in that one channel, we want to be smart about the things that we invest in or don't invest in. And so personally, I don't think LinkedIn newsletters are the best place to invest that. And you have 28,000 subscribers. That's amazing. I would try to funnel them externally and then try to continue building externally as well.
Okay. So that's a good reminder as I relaunch this newsletter, is like to have a lot of calls to action, like to my website or to subscribe, so that I'm building my email list at the same time. So thank you for that reminder, because it is easy to get caught up on LinkedIn, like, oh wow, like my subscribers doubled, but you're right, like that can go away tomorrow. So thank you for that reminder.
For sure. Thanks for the questions.
Tudor.
Hello. Hi, Austin.
Hey, Tudor, what's up?
Yeah, thanks. Things are going good. So I had a question for you. So I'm somebody who's just starting out, and I'm wondering, what is your system or process that you go through for creating posts? And to kind of give you a little context, I have less than 1,000 followers, so really low. And comments are great and impressions, but what I'm looking for is to get conversations in the DMs or even in comments, just sparking those kind of conversations and getting people to understand that they have leadership challenges. And that's kind of what I'm focusing on.
Cool. How often do you post every week?
So I post 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday.
Okay. All right. That's solid. And how long have you been doing that for?
2 months.
Okay, sweet. So I would, at that point, I'd probably like to see like another month of keeping that consistency going. The first part when you're just starting out is building that system of just consistency. Like, can I get a post out, in your case, 4 times a week and not miss? And like, if I go on vacation, or if I take a day off, or if this happens, like, is that still there? You basically want to get it to the point. It's kind of like going to the gym, for the first time in ever, or a long time, where you're like, all right, I got to pack my bag. I got to be really intentional about this. But then eventually it just becomes a habit. So I want you to not have to think about the act of creating content. And if you're already at that place, awesome, we can move to step 2. But if you feel like you're still like spending a lot of time and energy thinking about like, what do I write next? Or like actually writing the post and all that, I would probably spend some more time just refining that system until you're not thinking so much about the amount of energy and time that goes into content creation. Once you're at that place, the second thing I like to do is an audit. So basically the way that I like to do this is across 3 types of content. The first is your own content. The second is just the general platform content. And then the third is with creators that are in your space that are kind of a few steps ahead of you on the journey. So basically what I like to do for each one of those. So for you, I would go back and look at the last 2-3 months of content, and I would find the top, like in your case, with the volume, maybe like the top 4 to 5 posts. And then I would review them, and I would look at what topics do these cover, what subtopics. So for example, like if networking is the topic, like there's a lot of subtopics, right? So we want to get a little more refined. I would look at the format. Is it like a listicle? Is it does it have an image? Like what's the delivery or the medium that I'm using to convey this message? I would look at the character count. How long is this? And then I would try to come up with 3 hypotheses for why you thought that post did well. Most people can come up with 1. Most people can come up with 2. Pushing yourself to come up with like 3, 4, 5 reasons why that post did well really lets you hit it from every angle. And then I would kind of just rinse and repeat that. So for the platform, I would just scroll through your feed for a week, and I would collect about 10 different posts that have all met certain criteria. So maybe it's like posts that have more than 5,000 reactions and also, align with the stuff that you want to write about. It can be something as simple as that. You want to collect those posts and run the exact same analysis on it. And then you want to do the same thing for those creators. You only need a couple of them or a handful. But if you have 3 to 5 creators that you really look up to, go back through their last 3 months of content, find the top 5 posts, and run that same analysis. And then look at everything. What's holistic across the board here, both like what's true for you, but what's true on the platform and what's true for the people that you look up to. And then I would try to create, I always tried to turn that into a checklist where I would say, all right, if I'm going to write a new post, it needs to be on one of these major topics or one of these subtopics. It's going to want to be in this length, give or take a certain amount of characters. It's going to want to have this delivery mechanism, listicle, whatever it is. And that checklist is basically giving you a head start, right? You're starting the 100-meter sprint 20 meters in because you know that you're checking a lot of the criteria that you've seen be successful on the platform. And so once you do that, then you can create content around it, do it for another month or 2, and then go back and kind of rinse and repeat. Now, you don't need to do the platform analysis and other content creators analysis all that often, but I would do this for your content probably every single month until you start to see things that are building traction, until you start to see patterns that you can reliably build around. And then I would just continue doubling down on that content that's working well for you.
Okay. What about the creators who are in the space? What would you do for them?
I mean, it's up to you. If you have the time and you want to run that audit, you could do that on a monthly basis as well, just to see what, because that's typically like those people will be the ones kind of trying some new formats first. And we've seen there are all these different things that or trends, right? Content trends. Like people are doing the little animated videos for a while, then they're doing the cheat sheets, and then it just keeps moving forward. And so you can start to see what people are doing, and then you can decide whether or not you want to incorporate that yourself. And so I find it to be helpful to understand what's coming next and how people are positioning it. But I don't think that you need to worry about that all that much this early on. Instead, I would try to get a really core set of, for me, I have so much content now that any new trend that comes, I don't have to worry about creating new content. I just have to worry about injecting it into that new medium if I want to ride that trend. And that's kind of the place that you want to get to. You don't want to have to worry about knowing what core content is going to work for you before you start worrying about trends. The number one thing is understanding what's resonating with my audience. How do I build a system around creating content consistently that gets the engagement that I'm looking for? And then to your point, gets people into my DMs, and then I can convert them from there.
Sounds good. Super helpful. Thank you, Austin.
You bet.
Awesome.
No problem.
Hey, Nidal.
All right, thanks, Daniel and Austin. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights and the experience. Really appreciate it.
For sure.
All right, I have two questions. Number one is, which is very important when you said that the priority of if you and your time is to get your clients the skills that they help them to find jobs now and forever. This is number one. And in this case, speed is not your priority. But that would apply, as I understand it, for people who are working now and they're taking it easy. So they want to find their job maybe in the next year or after a couple of months. But people who are out of jobs or looking for jobs, I think the timeline would be very important for them. They're gonna come to us, say, hey, I'm looking for a job. I don't have a job right now, and I need someone to help me find a job next month or after 2-3 months. And I need you because you can get me there in that time. If I do it myself, it might take me 6 months. So my question to you is, do you in general work with people who are working right now, or people who are looking for jobs and they are out of jobs the time that you work with them?
Yeah, so it's about a 60-40 split, 60% employed, 40% unemployed. But so we made the conscious decision that we want to work with people who are viewing the value of our program in a certain way. So kind of to the point we spoke about earlier, are we leaving sales on the table for people who we could sell in, but have this, number one priority far and above everything else of getting a job in a certain period of time? Yeah, we certainly are leaving that revenue on the table. But that's an intentional choice because, as Daniel called out earlier, those people tend to be very stressful to work with. They tend to require a lot of resources and energy from our coaches. And in my opinion, I mean, of course you want to, when you're in that position, you're between jobs, you want to get into another job. And everybody's situation is different. If you need to keep the roof over your head and a job is going to, allow you to do that because of your financial situation, of course, like we want to accommodate that. But we are upfront with everybody about what our priorities are. And we don't say we're going to do this slowly. Like, we're going to try to help you do this as quickly as possible. But we want you to know that the path to those great results are doing this system a certain way, being thorough about it. And also, we're trying to get you into a value aligned job that you can stay at and grow at, not one that's going to have you in the job search in another 6 to 12 months. Some people don't like that answer and they don't sign up for our program, and that's fine with me. But that may not be fine for somebody else who really wants that revenue and is willing to kind of deal with everything that might come with that type of client. So it's not that we are, my answer isn't that like there's a necessarily a different way of responding to those people. Like, there certainly is. You can tell them like, cool, we'll work with you. We'll get you a job in 2-3 months. In my experience, that just comes with a certain type of client who requires a significantly higher amount of energy, time, and resources from my team. And in my opinion, that single sale is not worth that additional time and energy. And so we tend to pass on that client and look for somebody else who is going to be more aligned with our typical client and, what comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. The next question is, you mentioned that you're using, with your team, you're using different kind of channels besides LinkedIn. Would you mind sharing these channels?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the second channel is our newsletter. That's our second largest channel after LinkedIn. But then we also, we leverage SEO. That's our third largest channel. And then we do Instagram and Twitter as well. And we have a podcast too. Those last three, Instagram, Twitter, podcast, are kind of, a smaller cohort all added together. They're more meaningful, but really LinkedIn is the majority of our leads. Newsletter is the second largest channel, and then SEO would be the third.
So when you say newsletter, it's through emails, right? Not
yeah,
through
exactly.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's what I mentioned earlier to Carrie. We have we use this tool called ConvertKit, which is like a tool where you can collect email subscribers and all that. So yeah, that's that's what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Austin, one more question from Corey, and then we'll wrap it up. That's
okay. I can also stay a couple more minutes, Daniel, if we want to get. I don't know if you guys have a hard stop, but I see some more hands up from people that haven't gotten answers. So
I can stay up to 15 more minutes, but
okay. Yeah, that's not 3:15 is good by me.
Awesome. Corey.
Austin, you're the man. I just want to first of all give you your flowers. I feel like you are setting such a great standard for career coaches and really opening up a lot of doors of possibilities for people even like myself. So I want to thank you for your work. I got introduced to you, and then I got introduced to Daniel from LinkedIn, and you guys have just really been setting the tone. So my question is, as the industry continues to bring in more career coaches, it's becoming more popular now to become a career coach, and you're starting to see different types of career coaches. How do you, someone who is an industry leader, continue to set yourself apart? How do you still keep that competitive edge and bring unique value where your services don't become kind of like a copy and paste where everybody all of a sudden is doing the same thing and really just drowning out the industry? Like, how do you keep that competitive edge where your clients are getting a lot of value, but also your community too?
Yeah, 100%. And first off, Corey, I really appreciate the kind words, man. I mean, everybody's time in this call is valuable, and I'm grateful that you all decided to join and hang out with me. So thank you. And I also see you dropping in the posts and stuff too. So I'm grateful for that as well. But certainly, so I think the number one thing, and this is the easiest answer, the most difficult thing to do, but it's just to have a really good program or really good offering, right? And I think that's what I've seen the most with, if you go run a search for resume writer or career coach or whatever it is, you see a lot of, it's the same thing I tell our clients, like you see a lot of summarizing, you don't see a lot of selling. So people will tell you, I got a decade of resume writing experience. I've been in HR for this long. I've had this many clients, but none of it tells me how good you are at what you do. So, front and center, you can see our client outcomes on our website. And I think that's one of the things that people are most attracted to, is they kind of understand what they're getting if they join with us. But then also the value of the program itself, right? I think, if you have people join and then they don't get what they're looking for, the expectations, aren't quite met, that doesn't do a whole lot for you, right? Whereas if you have people join and they get a lot of value and they're really excited and they tell their people about it, they post about it, that helps you as well. So we've put a lot of effort into constantly trying to add more value to our clients, take their feedback into account, proactively come up with more that we can do for them. Now, granted, I have a team of 5, so it's a little bit easier to do that than when I was just operating by myself. So, certainly, keep that context in mind. But then I think the second piece that anybody can do is to focus on the differentiator, like what makes you different from the competition. And, for us, it's really the system and what we focus on. A lot of people have come to know me as the person who, my whole thing is get jobs without applying online, right? So I've sort of carved that niche out for us a little bit. But then the program itself, we kind of walk people through everything that they get, and we show them, all the questions that were asked before. How do we keep clients accountable? How do we make sure that they are getting what they expect? All that, we just have systems in place for that, and we share that with clients proactively. And so I think what people see, when they go talk to another career coach or career coaching service, they get a lot of the same thing. It's get on the call. Here's what I can do for you from a summary and action standpoint. Here are some client testimonials. Maybe I'll talk to you a little bit about your situation. Here are some guarantees potentially, and then do you want to sign up? And on our side, it's like, all right, here's why the market's hard right now, but here's why our clients are getting results. Here's why that's different from what you've been doing. And here's behind the scenes, here's the whole process step by step of how we'll get you there. And I think when you show people that, then they really see this person isn't just telling me they've written 100 resumes before and some of their clients have landed at these places, but I can see how working with Corey is going to get me from where I am to where I want to be. So I think differentiation in the outcomes, differentiation in the value of the program, and then differentiation in your process, but also how you convey your process to other people. I think those 3 things are key.
I love it. I love it. And then just real quick, you mentioned before in a LinkedIn interview you did on James Altucher had this idea of the 10 ideas. is there a book that's associated with that, or is that just like something that he brought up?
He's written about it in some blog posts, and they were older now at this point. I don't know if it's still something that he's like sharing all the time, but that strategy has paid a lot of dividends for me. I've used it in a lot of different capacities, and so I was looking for a way to kind of like frame up and tell a story around that 10 idea strategy. So that's kind of where it came from. But I don't think he has a book on it specifically. He does have a book called, I think it's called Choose Yourself, which I read a while back, and it was pretty solid. And I think he does talk about it in there. But also I wouldn't say that book is offering like groundbreaking advice that you may not get in other like kind of self-help personal development books. So I would just, if you're curious to know more about it, you can just Google the 10 idea strategy and his name, and you'll get a bunch of his posts that pop right up. But yeah, that's kind of where that came from.
Awesome. That sounds good. Thank you, Austin.
Cool. Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you so much.
And I would say like that's the power of like niching when you're starting out. Like niching can help you separate yourself, right? When
well,
you
Daniel,
have
you're like you have the #1 example of this.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I would say. Like as you're building your business, right? And you're like, hey, like I don't have all these followers, I don't have all these testimonials. If you are like niching down to an industry that you are part of, like if you lived in that industry, that I think to me is what's going to really help you get those, build your system, build your processes, build your success stories, and separate you. Like, like the David and Goliath, like I say this all the time, like the only way someone's going to hire you versus hire Austin, who's more generalized, is if they feel like they can provide industry specific advice that Austin is not going to, because he's more on the generalist side of the overall strategy.
And we like, just to share, like I had a prospect last week who was considering joining the program, was like, hey, I actually decided to join this other program because it's completely focused on my job title, and they plug you into like a local network of those professionals, and like that's what I was looking for. And so like what Daniel said is like literally like we do lose clients to people like that. So it's not just like general, that's actually like legit a strategy. And so that's certainly, I mean, we started super small and niche, only focusing on people who didn't want anything to do with online apps. And like, I only focused on that aspect of things, and then only layered in like resume writing and all this other stuff after we had enough of a base to scale. So yes, I love that, Daniel. It's a great ad.
Rose, and then Christopher.
Hey, Austin, thanks so much for staying longer to take my question. So my question is, do you still do outbound outreach on LinkedIn, even at your scale? And if so, what percentage? And what is the fundamental difference between building a business on LinkedIn versus being an influencer? And what was it about your message in particular that you think resonated at such a large scale?
Yeah. So we don't do outbound. It's all inbound right now. For #2, I'm trying to remember. Can you remind me what #2 was? I remember #3.
Yes. Well, what's the fundamental difference between building a business on LinkedIn versus being a LinkedIn influencer, which is focused on like top of the funnel, like generic content?
Yeah, it's making money. That's really, really the biggest difference. But no, so in all seriousness, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who have, Daniel called it out earlier, but 6-figure followings on LinkedIn who are making less than 6 figures a year, and not to say there's nothing wrong with bringing in that amount of money. Like I did that for a long time with our business, but I think it really, if I had to share a more serious definition, it would be people who are focused on growing their revenue versus growing their following and their engagement and their vanity metrics. It's really easy to get caught up in, how many likes, how many reactions, how many views. But the real metric that matters if you're trying to grow a business is revenue. And so, I know people who have 10,000 followers on LinkedIn who are running 6-7-figure businesses. And it's because they're really, really targeted, and they're really focused, and they have great product market fit. And so I think that's the biggest difference. You see a lot of people like, reposting an Adam Grant quote, or like something that went viral on Reddit or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. It gets a lot of traction, but that traction usually doesn't translate into people who are actually paying you money for your services. And so that's the biggest difference in my opinion. And then for number 3, can you remind me of that one as well? I apologize.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you said earlier as well about um, perhaps not being able to replicate market conditions and being able to grow at the scale that you have. But regardless of that, I think, what was it about your message in particular that allowed you to grow at such a scale? Because you're not the only career coach on LinkedIn. There's like thousands, right?
Yeah. So I think it kind of goes back to what I mentioned before. Like when I started, I went and I ran a search on LinkedIn for career coach, and I looked at a bunch of profiles, and everybody was kind of summarizing their experience. X amount of time in HR, Y amount of resumes written, here are the services I offer. And nobody was actually explaining to the people who are coming to their profile, why they should hire them or why they can make a difference. And so for me, I looked at all of the people I'd spoken to in my like little customer discovery calls. And I also looked at my own experience, and the most painful thing was the online application process for me and for everybody I spoke to. And so I just thought, well, if my process shifts away from that, and I know people are frustrated by this, so if I just brand myself not as a career coach, but as somebody who helps people land jobs without applying online, I think that could be a good fit. And I think that's turned out to be true. And I think that has only continued, right? People in today's market feel that the online applications are even more competitive. And then you have, all these posts about the ATS and the robots and AI, and people are just really freaked out about the job market and the traditional process. And I think we've been lucky enough to have found something that kind of continues to resonate. So I really think it was just that simple phrase of, we help people land jobs without applying online.
Just a quick follow-up about like how instrumental was building your own personal brand with that messaging?
Massive. Like that's the biggest. The other, I don't know if Corey's still on, but that's the other biggest thing is that nobody can compete with you on being you. And so, Daniel was kind of saying that with the niche piece as well, but, certainly my personal brand has made it such that, it's opened up a lot of opportunities for us. If we wanted to diversify, we want to make more money, we want to do this, that, or the other thing, we have a whole audience of people who we know are interested in those types of things. Whereas, a business built on, a company brand or outbound or whatever it is, there's a lot of upside and pros to that. But I think it's a little bit harder to kind of differentiate. Whereas, people have kind of, they know me, they know our brand, they kind of know what we're about. And that has paid big dividends. That's one of the reasons I think it's kind of hard to break in from like there's a lot of career coaching like agencies out there, but you don't see any of them really, gaining traction on LinkedIn or doing things in the same way. And that's because they operate more as a traditional business. Whereas if you have a personal brand, you have a lot of options. So I would say it's been like arguably the most instrumental part of our growth.
Amazing. Thank you.
For sure. No problem. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Christopher, last
Hey.
question, my friend.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
Take us home.
Thanks. I'm super nervous. Thanks for
Don't be,
responding to
Christopher.
Yeah,
You're all
thanks for
good.
responding to a couple of my comments on your LinkedIn post. And
Nice.
yeah, so number one, I do not have a traditional background. Okay. Like I wasn't a senior manager, I wasn't a recruiter. So pretty much kind of like nonprofit organization, kind of like but kind of like deep kind of like volunteer work and stuff like that, and kind of like doing a lot of projects and things like with that. And then I became English teacher, and then I started doing career coaching because I figured it was like just way better fit for me, and I could do it. So I was like wondering, like, I know that people who are kind of immigrants, like they're like kind of managers, senior managers, they're immigrants. I kind of track them, and they kind of see it when they looked at some of the names of my reviews, and even like look at my history. And I was like, well, I mean, I could career coach anyone, but should I focus on kind of like that group of people who are kind of like, they're obviously perfectly good English, right? But they feel more comfortable with that. Number one. And then number two, like with my posts, sorry, I got two questions here. And then number two with my posts is that my posts that do the best are like my personal posts, right? They're not like about job search or exactly like, they may be connected, but they're not like about like resumes and stuff like that. They're like really personal posts. But like, and then when I post more so about like networking or resume, it's like gets way less likes. But I want more likes. So I'm like, like, dang, like, what do I like do? Because I want to make like every single post like a personal post, right? And that's like, you got to dig deep into that bank of experiences and photos to make those personal posts. So anyway, those are like kind of like my two. And then people who do get a lot of likes, a lot of times the common denominator, I see that they have like other coaches and recruiters who comment on their posts. So I was like, okay, well, I could like comment more. But then it's like, I feel like it's not the strength of my actual content. It's just the connection. So anyway, those are the two.
Yeah, for sure. So for the first one, sometimes we have a plan for our business, and then, the market kind of has different plans for that. I said it earlier, I didn't want anything to do with coaching, and I just wanted to do the scalable course thing. But the demand for coaching was just, it kept banging down my door. And so if there are a group of people that are raising their hand, wanting to work with you, and they see value and that differentiator, I would lean fully into that. I would definitely or at least test it, right? Like, you can always go back to what you were doing, but if you kind of lean into it for a couple months and see what happens, every time we've done that and listened to those signals, it's been beneficial. So I definitely recommend, listening to that. For number two, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. Do you want to kind of be an influencer, or do you want to be a business owner? And the way that I view this is both of those types of content are good. In my mind, there's three levels to content, and they're a funnel. One is like the viral, high awareness content. So what you're talking about, personal story, goes viral, gets a lot of views. That brings people into the funnel. That gets people aware of who you are. That also has the highest, amount of vanity metrics, likes, engagement, etc. Then we have middle of the road content, which kind of toes the line. It's not like super in the weeds. It's talking about maybe content, concepts, ideas that people are familiar with. And that but it also kind of indoctrinates people a little bit into your philosophy and your expertise. That's going to get less engagement, but it's going to pull people further down the funnel. And then you have that low end of the funnel, which is like, these are, if you're running a sale, or if you're promoting your coaching or whatever it is, that's going to get the least amount of engagement, but it's also probably going to be the highest amount of conversions. And so we want all three types of posts, right? We want to pull people into the funnel with the high engagement personal stories. We want to bring them further into the funnel and get them sold on your value with those middle of the roads. And then we want to convert them. So, I think the biggest thing you can remind yourself is that, like, what do you want here? Do you want to have 1 million followers and, all of it kind of be fluffy and not much on the revenue biz front? Or do we really want to focus on optimizing for the amount of people that are, paying you money to do these services? And that's something that I still have to remind myself as well. It's not, something that I've completely figured out too. So I would say that. And then on the coaching side, I mean, that's marketing, right? That's a tactic. Some people are fine with it. Some people aren't. I would say kind of live your truth and what aligns with your values. I've been parts of those little, cohorts of people liking each other's stuff. I don't really do it now as much because it just feels like a lot of work. But certainly, that can help with engagement. But if it doesn't feel right to you, then you're not obligated to do it. And there are plenty of people who have grown without it. So it certainly can help, but it also doesn't, it's not going to be the reason you do or do not achieve the goals that you have for yourself.
Okay, excellent. That was great. That was great. We're almost 3:15 on the dot, Daniel. It's 3:16.
I tried, Daniel.
No, it's okay. I actually just moved my other meeting because I was like, I felt really bad. Anyways, but look, Austin, man, thank you so much. Really, really for doing this. Christopher, check out the message from Todd. I think connecting with Todd would be a good idea. If I could tell you anything, Christopher, and to anybody that's starting out, there's a niche out there for pretty much anything. I mean, I think Todd is a great example. Ellie's a perfect example of the types of career coaching businesses that you can build by having a really specific niche, and just beautiful businesses. Like, I just seen Todd and Ellie's businesses just grow so fast when they decided to niche down and have a clear audience, and then people start sharing it to each other, right? And then really quick announcement, next week, we're going to have a live coaching call, and it's going to be the first time we don't have a career coach. It's actually going to be my CPA. So my CPA agreed to come in and answer accounting questions, tax questions, like, should you be an LLC, an S Corp, like how you should be, what can you tax deduct? It's going to save you so much money. Trust me, I'm gonna show you one thing that she taught me that was crazy. I don't know, Austin, if you knew this. There's a rule called the Augusta principle, that essentially that you could rent your house to your business for 2 weeks, So I rented my house $1,000 a night for 2 weeks, so $14,000 from my business account to my personal account. I don't have to report it as income in my personal account, and it's a $14,000 expense in my business account. So just like crazy tips like that, like where the tax system is already built, like it's all legal. My CPA is going to come in and answer all your questions, explain some things that you guys can do, low-hanging fruits. So that's next week in the community. So definitely want to come and show up for that one, ask question. And again, Austin, man, you are awesome. Appreciate you just being so honest, open, candid, sharing so many great nuggets. I love the fact that the majority of the questions actually weren't even LinkedIn. Like they were all like client success, systems, process, the way that you process bottlenecks. I think that was really amazing. And again, it just shows that it's not just you creating great content, but it's like you are a true business master. And I appreciate you sharing that. Again, thank you all so much for being here. If you guys are looking for more help in career coaching, just feel free to reach out to me. Or if you know any other career coaches that can enjoy this type of content, please invite them to the community. Thank you guys so much. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Austin. All right, if you're watching this, it's because you finished watching this amazing conversation that we had with Austin Belcak. Austin is definitely one of a kind, and he is a legend in this space. So if you want to be part of this conversation and be able to ask questions live to our future guests, then don't forget to join our community. If you're already part of the community, then I'm glad that you are here. And if you're a career coach that is maybe feeling like you hit a plateau and maybe feeling stuck and want to take your career coaching business to the next level, then have a conversation with us, absolutely free. Have a discovery call with me and my team to understand more about where your business is today, what are those bottlenecks, and what is stopping you for you to get to the next level. Let us help you. These calls are absolutely free. I hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't already, like and subscribe, please go ahead and do so, and I'll see you guys on the next video.